That said, hello friends and welcome to my channel for another custom figure video. I say this every time, but I'm really excited about this one. This is a Mattel Jurassic World Dominion Colossal T-Rex, I believe. This is 1/12 scale. This is something you can get at retail, and this is one of my favorite kind of customizations where I take a thing that you can find on the shelves and try to turn it into a really expensive collectible. A company called ECC, I think it stands for Entertainment Creature Collectibles, they put out a 1/12 scale statue of Rexy from Jurassic Park. And that was in conjunction with Stan Winston Studios, who were the creature effects artists who created the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park. And they put out this $1,500 statue that is in 1/12 scale. Is just gorgeous, right? So my goal is to try to make this thing that I paid 65 bucks for on eBay look like a $1,500 collectible. I wanted one of these for a long time. I put it off because I didn't have anywhere to put it. Like, it's huge. I mean, it's like 4 feet long, right? But I recently sold some stuff, rearranged some shelves a little bit, and now I have the perfect spot for it. And it's gonna go with my custom 1/12 scale soft goods Jurassic Park figures that I made a few months ago, and with the new Nanmu Studios Velociraptors that I also picked up for that same display. First thing I need to do is reconfigure her setup. She's very straightforward right now, and I want her to be looking out this way. And she's also going in a corner, so that kind of constrains the room I have a little bit. So the plan is gonna be, I'm gonna cut a section out of her tail, just kind of like a pie slice, and then close it up a little bit, patch it with some epoxy. I'm gonna match the sculpt work and everything so it'll be seamless. And that'll give the tail more curve and it gives me more clearance over here. Then for the head, this actually comes off, and I've already loosened it, but it was actually already stripped out, which frankly helps me, which is nice. I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna cut a piece of the head off and then reconfigure where it attaches more so like this. Also in doing that, I'm gonna cut another section out of here. There's already a cut from where they attach this piece. There's no articulation there, it's just part of the assembly process. So I'm gonna cut a pie slice out of that as well and do the same thing with the head as with the tail. And then again, patching any areas, matching the textures. And then she also has the scratch marks all over her from the fight with the raptors, I think is probably what those are supposed to be from at the end of the first movie. And they carried that forward in the continuity in the later films. I don't care for the later ones. I'm all about the first movie. So I'm also gonna fill in those scratch marks with epoxy putty and, you know, sculpt the textures to match and everything. I'm gonna leave the articulation points in the hips and the little arms here, and then try to maintain whatever articulation I can in the jaw, because I think it's cool to have the option of her mouth being open or not. Also at the ankles here. And then once all that is done, she's gonna get a nice new, well, several new coats of paint. So I'm gonna be looking at that Stan Winston ECC version for inspiration and reference, as well as whatever other reference material I can find. And when this is all said and done, I think we're gonna have something that looks a lot more like a $1,500 collectible statue than a $65 used toy that I got off eBay that smelled kind of weird. So with that done, I've taken my before shots and I'm gonna start cutting into this thing. So let's get to it. All right, so here's an update on Rexy. I got the tail reconfigured. It's a little sloppy looking right now, but I'm gonna be changing it up with some epoxy to fill in the cracks and smooth it out and add the texture. I'm gonna keep this here because that's where the tail attaches and detaches from, and if I ever need to like move it or something, I want to be able to do that. And then I got the head reattached, so I actually took, there's this plastic like inner piece, and I took a whole section out of it because I needed to be able to truncate the neck a bit. And actually, thankfully, this piece of it, this is hard plastic. This is a much softer version, so I cut this at an angle. And then there's this sort of connector piece that connected this to the body here. And I was able to re-glue that inside of this piece and then reconnect it and glue that. So it's probably not on there like super sturdy right now. I mean, it's super glued on there and it's not moving, but once I add some epoxy sculpt and, you know, kind of bridge this gap, smooth this transition here, it's really gonna harden on there and hold it all in place. So a lot of sculpting work coming up next, but I like the angle. You know, I wanted it to be at this kind of like head tilted angle just to give it a little bit more life. And I think when it's actually like on the shelf, it's gonna look pretty cool like that. instead of just kind of being like a straightforward vanilla pose. So that's where it's at right now. A lot of sculpting to do, and then I'll check back in when it's ready for paint. Now I wanted to touch base on the eyes real quick. So the thing that's going to make this leveled up beyond just kind of a retail thing is going to be the eyes. Now these are what the eyes look like in the figure. You can see I cut it out on this side, and the idea is that I'm going to replace it with these little half round glass, I guess, beads, I don't know, rhinestone things. So I'm going to paint the actual eye anatomy on the back of this and then insert it into the head, and that's going to give us a nice realistic look. All right, here's a look at Rexy all sculpted up, and yeah, got all the scratches filled in. There's also an area on her stomach I forgot to mention that is like, this toy had a gimmick where you can put stuff down her mouth, and then, there's like a flap on her stomach that opens up and you can pull it out. I sealed that up as well. And then you can see her looking at the new angle. It is quite a difference from before. I mean, it's probably about a 45-degree angle now as before it was straight on. You can see it's not as curvy as I would like it to be, in sort of like a natural neck turning way, but I think given what I had to work with, it turned out pretty well. And you can see it here from the other side where I've sculpted it to match. So yeah, she actually did have a lot of like scratches on her from that raptor fight. But yeah, I got her all sculpted up, and then I also touched up the seam on her back where the two sides of the figure come together. So that's all cleaned up now too. Additionally, I sharpened her teeth quite a bit. They were very blunt and just kind of fat, and so I chiseled them down. I still need to do a little bit more sanding to smooth some of the edges, but you can see the difference here with how it looked before. So yeah, with all that, she's pretty much ready for paint, and I'm gonna spend probably the next day and a half doing that. Here's some footage of me painting it. Now, I typically don't work on anything this large, so for this I decided to use these kind of just cheap craft store sponge brushes. They're really good at covering a large area, and you can kind of dab it on. You get a nice even covering that isn't all textured with brush strokes. Little painting update. Some of this might be kind of hard to see because it's still a little bit wet. What I've been doing is essentially repainting what was already there, which I know seems silly, but I wanted to get everything to be one texture, like, one kind of finish, because this acrylic paint is pretty matte, and so it's kind of like coarse to the touch instead of the smooth plastic that was, what the dinosaur's made out of. And also just color's a little bit more true to what I'm going for, and also like better blending. So I've been taking that sponge brush, as you saw, just cheap stuff from the craft store basically, and I've just been applying the paint to the different areas of the dinosaur, and then I did a kind of brownish black wash to kind of darken it. So I'm trying to fade it from dark to light on the belly. So this is kind of the base coat. Next, I'm going to be going in with like a wash of green to kind of tone down the brightness of it. But I don't want to go too green. A lot of the way that this dinosaur looks in the movie is based on just the lighting in the scene. We first see her at night in the rain, so she looks a lot darker. And then when she's like in the daytime, she's a lot lighter colored. So, I'm going to be kind of finding a happy medium. Also, there's going to be kind of just my own filter. Yeah, all in all though, I'm having a lot of fun. It's a huge thing to paint, but I'm not mad at it. Like, it's been a good time, and I've never done anything like this, so it's a fun challenge. But here she is with another several layers on. So I've done a black wash to bring out a lot of the sculpted detail and the wrinkles and whatnot. Then I've done also kind of a yellowish green wash, sort of brought out some of this transitional area on her side. And then I went in with a brown and black wash, and then again with a dark kind of brownish green wash. I'm pleased with how it is turning out. There's still a lot of work left to do, but I'm getting close to the point now, I think, where I get to start doing some of the detailing. So some of the speckling and the dark areas on the face or on the eyes, she'll kind of have this black detailing in here, and then around her mouth and stuff, and then like kind of the tiger stripes on the back. So I'm very excited to do that stuff, because that is the real fun part for me. It's pretty late right now, so I'm probably going to leave this for the night and then come back to it in the morning fresh and ready to do some tedious detailing. I wanted to show a little more of my painting process here. So again, I'm using that sponge brush to create the tiger stripes on the back. Now I thought about airbrushing these because they are very kind of subtle and you know, they sort of fade out, but I don't really like using an airbrush. So the sponge brush worked perfectly. Then here, I'm detailing the face. Now, I'm starting off with just water, and then I'm going in with some wash, which is watered down paint, in this case, black. And I'm letting it kind of seep into the areas that I already made wet. Now, that's called wet into wet in watercolor painting. And what it does is kind of lets that color bleed into the areas you want it to. But you can see I'm doing very subtle layers here, because if I just go in just straight black, it's going to be too hard of an edge and it's not going to look natural. So going in with these watered down layers over and over, you know, probably 3-4 times till you get it how you want it, you know, darker in the middle, lighter on the edges. That's really the way to do it. Here I'm doing the same thing on the lower jaw. I'm getting it wet first and then going in with a wash, and that is just allowing me to blend it more easily and kind of fade it. When I pull the dinosaur away, that's when I'm checking to make sure it's symmetrical with the other side. But yeah, just using this to bring out some of the texture in the sculpt. It's a pretty soft sculpt overall compared to, you know, what it should be. But, you know, that's what you get with a mass market toy. All right, please excuse the total mess that the workbench is right now, but I got the eyes painted. So here they are on these glass beads, and then that's what it looks like on the back. So I just painted it layer by layer onto the back. Now, the issue I ran into is that when I actually started kind of trying to maneuver it into the eye socket, the perfect circle I made of black got kind of skewed just from like me pushing on the back of it. But I don't really see a way around that. You know, this the paint's not really adhering to the back of this glass super tightly, so it's gonna, you know, be somewhat malleable. So I'm just gonna work with it as it is. And I made the details of the eye kind of off center so that when they're actually in the head like this, they'll be where they need to be. So yeah, very happy with how that looks. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted. Just you can't approximate that kind of clear dome without actually having it on there. You know, I could paint like a sphere and put a gloss on it, but it's just not going to be the same. And then I painted the teeth and put a gloss coat on there, a real thick layer of Mod Podge. So that's helping to give them kind of a bony look. So yeah, I'm gonna get the guys glued in place. I'm gonna use hot glue. They fit into these areas back here. I had to kind of carve out some space for it. So it's gonna be tricky. I mean, once I get them in there where I want them, I'm gonna pretty much have one shot to get it right. Otherwise, the glue is gonna stick to the back of the eye and I'm gonna have to redo it. So hopefully I don't mess it up. Now, it wouldn't be one of my setups without a little bit of diorama action. So had to make this to go with it. This is meant to be like the paddock for the T-Rex that it breaks out of. Now, I had this from another diorama that was just kind of left over, and then I just cut into it and mounted this thing. This is a piece of an old McFarlane Toys King Kong diorama. I bought it loose several years ago and have used different pieces. Like some of it I used in my 89 Batcave diorama. So I've had this I-beam for a long time and I've been like, I gotta use this for something. And this was the perfect application for it. And so I bought more aquarium plants for this. This is the twist ties that were on the packaging. So I just cut it all and drilled some holes in this and glued them in place. And then, yeah, that's gonna stand up like this. And it'll be kind of the finishing touch to the setup. So I got everything done. We are gonna take a look at the finished T-Rex and then we'll look at it on the shelf. Super pleased with how this turned out. The eyes are my favorite part, and what's cool about it is if you notice, they follow you when you move around it. So it looks like she's always tracking you, which is so cool. And that's because of the three-dimensional dome on top, you know, of clear glass above the actual paint. There's so much more life to this thing now. I think the articulation cuts are hidden better now that it's more of a cohesive paint job. Before there were different kind of colors and textures and stuff. Here's a closer look at the head and the teeth, and you can really see the eye effect now that I was talking about, how it follows you as you move around it. I'm so glad that worked. I had the idea to use those beads. I've used similar to make taillights on 1/12 scale vehicles, and I thought, you know, that'd be perfect for the eyes if I can cut them out. Not quite, ECC quality, but I think pretty good. So to answer the question I set out, I guess at the beginning, is this like a $1,500 collectible? Maybe. A lot of that's going to come down to the cost of my labor, but ultimately it's definitely more than a $65 off-the-shelf toy now, which was what I set out to do in the first place. So I've been wanting to do this for so long. Like I said, I finally figured out a spot for it. My ultimate goal was to make the Ford Explorer because, you know, I have, as you can see behind this, my shelf system that has all of the iconic vehicles and the characters that go with them. But it's impossible to find a 1991 Ford Explorer in 110 scale, 112 scale is an RC thing. I know Iron Studios made one, but it's like $700 and it's probably a little bit too big for my figures. So one day, maybe I'll scratch build one, but until then, here it is on the shelf with the other JP stuff I have. And as we wrap up here, I just want to thank you all again for watching. And I invite you to subscribe to the channel and share this with a friend who likes Jurassic Park. You know, the biggest way you can help a channel like this is to spread the word. And, you know, we all share all kinds of dumb stuff with each other all day long. So I would love to be one of those dumb things you share with your friends. If you're curious about any of the stuff you see in the background, I recently posted a collection tour video. So go check that out. There's a video right before this on my channel's feed. You can also find a link to my Instagram below where I post a lot of updates on the stuff I'm working on. So that's going to do it for this one. Until next time, keep your head on swivel.